Hi everybody, my name is Ailish Quiñones Rivera. I always say my full name. I'm a first year Ph.D. student in ethnomusicology, and today we're going to be talking about Christmas music in Puerto Rico, which is where I grew up.
Yeah, well, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas!
Yeah, and I'm super excited to talk to you about this because there's so many Christmas traditions all over the world, and it's neat to kind of do a little bit of a deep dive into one in Puerto Rico.
Yeah.
So tell me, did you grow up in Puerto Rico? Talk about your kind of experience with Puerto Rico.
Yeah, I did. I grew up in Puerto Rico, and then I moved here to go to college. So pretty much like all my formative years, and then high school and middle school, all of those years, it was in Puerto Rico and listening to Christmas music there.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about it. What does Christmas look like in Puerto Rico?
Well, I think that's one of the biggest culture shocks for me when I came here. And I think talking to other people here, one of the biggest culture differences that they saw, because our Christmas music is very lively, very happy, a lot of percussion. So sometimes here I feel like you listen to Vince Guaraldi and it's like really mellow. And even though it's like all about the space and the ambience, but in Puerto Rico we do have like a lot of traditions that are accompanied by music, and a lot of those traditions are held in like party scenes and like in group settings, which we can talk about. Yeah. One of them is parrandas, which is like a group of people and you go through different houses and you sing to them, similar to caroling, but it's very different. It's very percussive. It's generally played in a genre called plena. So it has three hand drums called panderos, and each drum plays a different rhythm, and when played together they play a rhythm similar to tung ding 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 ding, and people sing. So usually around 2 a.m., 3 a.m., you just show up in a house of a person that you know, and you start singing this really loud music, but very lively, and they're supposed to greet you and like cook for you and like host a party right there on the spot.
So is this on Christmas like Eve or Christmas Day, or when can this happen?
Generally throughout the whole Christmas season.
And when does this Christmas season kind of start and end?
People say that in PR is like the longest Christmas because it generally starts around like for me it starts in October. Like after Yeah, after Halloween I'm already listening to Christmas music.
Okay.
And I think a reason behind that is that there's so much to listen to that it's almost like building up to Christmas Day. And then after Christmas Day, we celebrate New Year's. After New Year's, we celebrate Three Kings Day, which is generally around the 5th or 6th of January. And then there's the Octavitas, which is, I really don't remember what the Octavitas are, but I think it's related to the Catholic Church, which we have a big Catholic influence because of Puerto Rico's relationship with Spain. And then after that, we have Las Calles de San Sebastián, which are fiestas, parties you throw to saints, also influenced by the Catholic Church. But in that case, each pueblo, each town in Puerto Rico has their own saint that they throw a party to. And San Sebastián is the saint of the capital, San Juan. So those are seen as the biggest ones. And then after those, Christmas ends, generally.
So it's like 2 or 3 months of celebrations.
Yes,
wow.
2 or 3 months of celebration.
Yeah, so this party you're talking about where they like what's it called?
Parranda. It has different name. Parranda. It has like some people call it asalto because of the asalto translates to assault, but it's like to surprise. In that sense in Spanish, it means to surprise someone because you are surprising someone at their house.
Literally at 2 a.m.
Yeah, literally at any time. Some people like to warn them, like, hey, we're going to show up.
Like if you have little kids, right?
Yeah.
Do you warn them?
Yeah, you warn them like, hey, we might show up this day. We might show up this other day. But I feel like Christmas season is also really tied to like our traditions and the pride of growing up in the island. So that's where traditional Puerto Rican genres like bomba and plena and música jíbara come into resurgence, and a lot of people associate with Christmas with like traditional elements of Puerto Rican culture, whether that be food or music.
Yeah, so like with the music, you know, I would never think of Christmas music as 3 drums. So it's so interesting.
Yeah,
like if you were just listening to on the radio, what kind of like instrumentation do they have for Christmas music in Puerto Rico?
Yeah, so this is something that I actually asked people because of a lot of this is kept through oral tradition, and not a lot of it is written out, right? So a lot of people have different ideas of what Christmas music is. A lot of them associate it with the plena and parrandas. A lot of them associate it with música jíbara, which is completely different, more tailored to the cuatro, which is a really small guitar, almost like the size of the banjo.
Okay.
And that's the main instrument, and it sounds very different from the percussive plena.
Are they playing chords and people singing along, or like how does that work?
So there's the cuatro, and there might be other chordal instruments like guitar, and the cuatro is generally improvising over the other chordal instruments, and there's less percussion, probably a bongo, but not really, because that was also played while like walking or impromptu, so you just really played with whatever you had. And there's a person singing that improvises in a very methodical way. Generally, you give that person a pie forzado, or a phrase that they're gonna center their improvisation around. And it has to be like poetic, like A, B, B, A, C, C, D, D. And it has a poetic form called décima.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so generally you can tell that person like, of course in Spanish, like, I went to drink coquito, which is a traditional drink in Puerto Rico associated with Christmas. And they have to create a story in that form and in the rhythm along with that theme that you give him or them at the moment.
Yeah. Are there really famous people that like are kind of known for their Christmas songs? Like we have like Bing Crosby. Like
yes.
Everyone in this country knows. So who would they be?
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on the genre, really. And I think and it depends whether or not it's commercialized or not. I feel like people, when it comes to música jíbara and when it comes to bomba en plena, a lot of people just play traditional songs that they've heard from time to time. Like, I have a couple here. Wait, let me see. Llegaron las Navidades is one, which means Christmas arrived. So I think in that sense, like it's more like passed down. Like people don't really, like taught in school, people don't really associate like they have their own authors, but I think it's more like passed down tradition. But when Christmas music starts to become more commercialized, and like this album that I brought here.
Yeah, so like let's talk about this album. Like what is this album?
Yeah, I think that's my favorite album. There's like when there's a moment, and I think for me personally, I think this is one of the first instances where salsa and música jíbara and bomba en plena start to get together in a commercial sense. So in this album, you have Yomo Toro, that's a very famous name, that plays the cuatro, and he is really one of the biggest stars of the show in this album, because from what I've read, not a lot of people had commercialized the sound of the cuatro at this time. It was more bomba, it was more plena. That's from what I've heard. But at this time, when this released, and a funny thing is actually they weren't planning to have a cuatro, they wanted an electric guitar. But it was like coincidental that they like calling each other and they were like, oh, I know a cuatro player, do you want that? And they were like, maybe, like, sure. And it just worked out, and it's like one of the biggest things in this album, where you have people like Hector Lavoe and Willie Colon, who are really known and really big in the salsa world, interacting with traditional genres like música jíbara, and their songs in this album that are inspired by traditional música jíbara songs. Like Ramito is a really famous singer, actually from where I'm from, in Caguas, and he interprets one of his reinterprets and is inspired by one of his songs and plays it here in his second production, Puerto-Rican.
Great. And it seems like a lot. So people are just playing these in their homes, and music is part of like family life more probably than in America, would you say? Yeah,
definitely. I think like if you don't know these, it's like, what do you mean you don't know these? Like, these are so important to the culture and what you grow up in listening to. And I feel like it's definitely like a family imposed thing. Like, it's Christmas and you're heading to your grandma's house and they're playing this. Yeah, not at 1 a.m. No, at a reasonable time.
Okay.
At a reasonable time. And they're playing this, so I think it's something passed down in like tradition. And I also remember growing up in my school, we would sing villancicos, which are also originated from Spain. It was a tradition that traveled and largely influenced by the Catholic Church. But this music, a lot of it tells like the story of like Jesus and his and birth. And there's a really famous one called Villancico Yaucano. A lot of them are valses, very mellow, very similar.
Yeah.
But they tell, Villancico Yaucano, for example, tells the story of this jíbaro, like a rural person that doesn't have much money. And it's an imagination really, but he is about to like meet the first like Jesus, and he doesn't have anything to give him. So at the end of the song, he says, since I don't have anything to give you, I will give you my heart. So it's like this very mellow song. So I think that's also another genre that people associate with Christmas music. So there we have música jíbara with the cuatro. We have bomba, which we haven't talked about bomba because a lot of people don't associate bomba with Christmas music. But
what is bomba?
Bomba is also an Afro-Puerto Rican genre. The African slaves that were brought to the Caribbean, and in this case in Puerto Rico, they would use the barriles as a form of as a gathering, and they would have like, that was one of their main forms of like resistance and dealing with slavery and all of that. So that's a tradition that is still alive today, and it's very percussive. There's different types inside of bomba, different genres of bomba inside of different subgenres is the correct word inside of bomba. And people, very famous salsa singers, to go back to famous names, like Ismael Rivera has a song called Bomba de Navidad, and it's based in the bomba rhythm, and he just sings in it. So there's other songs that are played in group settings that, for example, and this is a really confusing one, and I was actually researching this and talking to some people in PR, because there's a song called, I don't even know what it's called. I think it's called like La Bomba, and usually how it goes is that you're in a group setting and you're singing it, La Bomba, ay que rica, eh? And then you sing that, and then there's silence, and you need to improvise like 2 verses that rhyme. And if it's good, people go like bomba and sing again. If it's bad, they go like no sabe nada, and like you don't know anything. You don't know anything. You suck. And then you sing again. So even though it's called bomba, it was originally a bomba, but usually it's played in plena.
Okay.
Which is the other one with the 3 hand drums. There's bomba associated with the West African slaves that usually were played in the coast of Puerto Rico. And then there's seis bombeado, which is associated with the cuatro, but also has a similar rhythm to the bomba. That bomba from the coast and bomba from maybe more rural places that included the cuatro, because the cuatro is associated with rural nests in Puerto Rico. So that's just interesting.
That's amazing. Why do you think it's so different than this country? Because this country, I feel like you can go to Florida or Montana and like white Christmas is white Christmas.
Yeah.
Right? It's all the same.
Yeah.
Right? Like before here, you were in Pennsylvania. Right? I'm sure you see there's very little difference with like Christmas music between Austin and Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So why do you think it's so different in each little kind of town?
In each person? Like we were talking before we started, like your dad visited in the 50s and it was like very different from what it is now. So I think that and how people were more sparsed out throughout the island gave forth for creating their own traditions, like own mini traditions. And then when they start moving into more urban areas to get jobs and things like that, then everything kind of like connects together and it can quickly be like no, this is the correct way, or no, this is the correct way. So I think it's almost trying to see it in a different lens, through a different lens of understanding like, oh, like each place created things like in a different way. For example, like I grew up in a more urban area in Puerto Rico, and my partner grew up in a more like in the west side of Puerto Rico, which is less urban. And in like my own research studying like bomba and plena, he makes me think a lot about like how I view bomba and plena, because plena and music was something that he was exposed to more than I was, because I was more in a more urban area where there's an amalgamation of things happening. So I think even though it's a smaller place, I feel like things are like almost farther apart. It's interesting how it happens, because you do have those instances where you have different people with different ideas of what the music is. And that's something that I wanted to come here and put that out there, because like I might be saying something here from what I've read, but another person might have a different idea of that. Like before studying music here, I would have said, like if you asked me in high school, I would have said, oh, música jíbara is just Christmas music. But it's not just Christmas music. It's its own genre, and with time, people see it as associated with just Christmas music. But it's really its own genre that in its beginnings might have not just been for Christmas. It was for like their own enjoyment. So I think that's something that definitely needs more research, but it's something that you learn from like talking. The more people that you talk to and the more that you read, the more that you learn.
Yeah, it's just so interesting. Now, do people go to professional concerts, or does most of the Christmas music take place in the home? Or like you know how in this country we'll go to like there'll be like Rockefeller Center, there'll be like big musicians playing Christmas songs. Does that thing happen there, or how does it work?
Yeah, I think with salsa, definitely. Like people will recreate these albums and sing them. I don't know if all of them. I know that in my town there is one. There's like a municipal band, and they do like Christmas music and events in the in El Pueblo, which is like how would I describe it? It's like the downtown area of my town. And
I know in this country, like a lot of our Christmas music isn't necessarily about Jesus, right? We have a lot about Santa.
Yeah.
So is it the same there, or does it tend to be more focused on Jesus?
A lot of it is on Jesus, but there's also a lot of talk about Puerto Rico in a sense of like, for example, the second song, Canto Aboriquén, means a song for Boriquen, which is the Taino or indigenous name for Puerto Rico. This song is really interesting. Esta Navidad talks about people who move to the US and then come back to Puerto Rico with this sense of like, I'm better than you because I went to the US.
Oh,
so
wow. And that's a Christmas song.
And that's a Christmas song. Yeah. Because they come back in Christmas to celebrate Christmas.
Oh, they become basically you.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a song about you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if I go back and I have this sense of like big ego and stuff, like that song would be directed.
Your parents will put that song on.
Yeah. And I do remember my parents being like, remember this song, remember this song, because there are people who have that sense of like, I'm better now because of that. Another big group, salsa group in Puerto Rico, is El Gran Combo, and they have their own salsa. They have their own Christmas album, and in that one they have a song called No hay cama pa tanta gente, which it's actually quite funny because it's about like this group of people, let's say maybe a parranda, and they arrive to the host house and there's too many people, and the singer is saying there's not enough room for this many people, and it's kind of telling like, it's funny because it's about famous salsa players. So Celia Cruz, they mentioned Celia Cruz in that song, which is another salsa singer, but they're saying about they talk about that in that song of the problem of if you have a lot of people in your house and you don't have room to host for them. They have another song that tells the story of a person from a rural area that moves into the urban area, and kind of that adaptation of like making more money. Like, I'm never gonna go back to the rural area. So there's a lot of storytelling that happens in Christmas music, and kind of a lot of it is around, it can be either like Christmas, around Christmas time. It can be around food is another big one.
Oh, yeah.
Like we make...
Yeah, what does the food look like at Christmas in Puerto Rico?
So we eat a lot of lechon or pernil, people call it. So it's like I don't know if this is too graphic. If it is, you can cut it out. But like the pork, like the animal. How would you?
The pig.
The pig, yeah.
Yes,
you take the pig and you put it in a bar, and then you cook it in like an outside setting. And that's very, very common. So you would hear about that a lot. Like, we're gonna eat pernil, we're gonna eat pasteles, we're gonna eat
I guess that tastes the best.
Yeah.
My father-in-law used to do that back in Russia, and
really?
He said nothing tastes as good as that.
Yeah.
It looks kind of gross, but
it does, but it tastes wonderful. So a lot of the music too revolves around like food and looking forward to that, and details that in the music.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do they do like the Christmas tree? Because there's no pine trees for a long distance.
Yeah.
But I see some trees here, right? I see like a picture of a tree here.
Yeah, Christmas trees are normal. I actually just learned that there was like a Christmas tree associated with Puerto Rico. It's like this very, very like small tree. It doesn't look like at all like a Christmas tree.
Like Charlie Brown's tree.
Yeah, it's like very small. But I just learned that was a thing, that people had something other than a pine tree. But generally you would see the Christmas tree. Yeah,
awesome.
The pine tree.
Yeah, and what does it look like, the tradition of Christmas? Because in this country, I know it's normal for like the Christmas Eve night, people go to church, and then they'll come home. They might have a meal. Then they'll go to sleep, and like Santa will come, and then the next morning they'll open presents, and then later Christmas Day they'll have like a big feast for like a whole bunch of family. Yeah. What does the tradition look like in Puerto Rico?
It's interesting because we do have like Santa's gonna come and all of that, and like we leave cookies out. And for me, we did set in Christmas Eve, like there's like anticipation and like we're all excited and all of that, and there's like we do a dinner
And that's Christmas Eve. You do
that's
dinner.
Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
And then on Christmas Day, we generally have like this route where we go throughout like our whole families, and generally like Christmas morning, like we open our presents in a family setting, and then I go visit my grandparents from one side of the family and hang out with them, and then I go to my other grandparents' side of the family. So it's very like family setting.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense because it's a smaller country, so it's easier to, like here, it's like, well, my grandparents live in Buffalo or in Seattle, right? It's hard to just go over there, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even here, like you have like Santa and like elves.
Yeah.
I think the pictures in this and the album cover is just hilarious, but yeah, I think that tradition is there. I think Three Kings Day is somewhere where we're different, and
that's so interesting. Is that only celebrated in Puerto Rico, or is it celebrated elsewhere?
I've actually been trying to like ask people from other parts in Latin America, like, oh, do you celebrate Three Kings Day? And some people say like, yeah, but it's not that big of a deal, really. So it's similar to.
And this is when the three kings came to Jesus, right?
Yeah.
So he was like a week old or something, right?
Yeah.
And the three wise men or whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So generally we do a similar thing that you do with Santa and leave out cookies, but we take like a shoebox and we put grass in it for the camels.
Oh,
that's a tradition. So the Three Kings Day Eve, we like take a shoebox, put grass in it, and that's like the equivalent of cookies for Santa.
Mm-hmm.
It's grass for the camels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're kings. They don't need anything.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So now you've been in this country 5 years? 6 years?
Yeah. 6 years.
6 years. Have you seen any influence from Puerto Rico coming here? I mean, I bet you in State College it would be a big no. But maybe in Austin, no?
No, not at all, honestly. And even like a lot of, like, for example, like the ethno department has like a decent amount of people from like Latin America, and a lot of them don't know these albums, and I'm like, what? Like, is this just a Puerto Rico thing, or maybe like just a Caribbean thing, or I don't know. I think that's something that I still need to figure out. But I think the most intersection that I see is with other, especially like most intersection Caribbean, like Dominican Republic, Cuba. There's like a lot of intersection there.
Between Puerto Rico and like Cuba and Dominican Republic.
Yeah. And then bigger scale, like then Latin America, some intersection there, but not as much as just the Caribbean. But with the US, I don't see anything. I mean, I remember like listening to Christmas music like my first year when I was in the US, and my friends were like, oh, what are you listening to? Christmas music. What? Like, that's insane. Like, that's your Christmas music? And I'm like, yeah, that is my Christmas music.
Now, is there lots of alcohol involved? I know in this country, alcohol is,
Yeah, definitely. A lot of alcohol involved. There's a drink called coquito, and that is the equivalent. A lot of people say it's like eggnog.
Okay.
But it has alcohol in it, and some people drink
a lot of our eggnog has alcohol.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
It's like, but we also sell it without. But I think, like if you go to like a grown-up party, and there's eggnog, it's probably there's alcohol in it.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting. But people drink that a lot, and some people have it like in a shot form, or some people have it like a mini drink, and they make different flavors, like Nutella flavor, like cake flavor, chocolate flavor, pistachio flavored. It's like a whole market of coquito.
Yeah. Does it get cold in Puerto Rico at all around this time? So it's there's nothing about like the changing of the season and getting chilly at all.
Yeah, and I think that's something also that doesn't show up in the songs. Mm-hmm. I would say maybe songs that talk about living in the diaspora would talk about, there has to be songs that talk about like the experience of Christmas in the US and going back home and like the cold and all of that. But I know there's songs in like the weather outside is frightful where you talk about that doesn't happen in PR.
Yeah. Well, having lived in Pennsylvania, you can see why we have those, right? Because it does get frightful.
Yeah. Yes. It's rough.
Yeah. So where do you think Christmas music's going to go in the future with Puerto Rico? Do you think it's going to become more Americanized, or will it keep its identity? Or
I don't think it's going to become Americanized, because I feel like a lot of people, like, Christmas time arrives and it's like this distinct thing that they have from the US. So I feel like it's a lot of people see Christmas traditions in Puerto Rico as like an essential part of the Puerto Rican experience and growing up in the island.
Yeah.
So I think there would almost be like pushback. Like, I don't want to assimilate to this other thing, but
as they should. Yeah, absolutely.
But there is you can find music that there are singers that sing like traditional music from the US and then just sing it in Spanish. That's normal. I know that this
so they sing album, like Jingle Bells, just in Spanish.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this album has like snippets, I would say, like really little snippets of like Jomo Toro, the cuatro player, playing melodies. I think he plays like Silent Night at one moment, but it's really short. But is
it like a little, just like almost like a riff?
Almost like a riff. Yeah. But and I think the whole singers, they sing like Noche de Paz, like Silent Night. So you do see that influence, but it's almost like adapted to meet the tradition within Puerto Rico.
Oh, that's so cool. So cool. So I know you're about to get on a plane and go back home.
Yes.
So what does your Christmas look like these next few days?
My Christmas? Well, I'm really excited to... I haven't gone to many parrandas, as like, that's surprising, but...
Is that because you were too young? Is that something you do like post 18 or...
I do know of people who like go to parrandas from all their lives, but my parents weren't really like outgoing, like going out people. So of course, like, I depended on them, and like Christmas time is like a family time, so I would spend it with them. But now going back and like, this easily can become my research. So I'm really interested to go back and listen to this. So
are you planning to do actual research with Christmas music?
I think not as my main research, but I feel like in like preparing for this, I did find a lot of gaps, and I feel like there's a lot that can be done with Christmas music in PR, and it's something so that I hold so dear in my heart, that I love so much.
And not a lot of people know about it, because you're saying they don't write it down, right? So it's like you're the bearer, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I think that's something that I'm looking forward. I will say there's a bar called El Boricua, and every Monday they host...
Is this here in Austin?
No, in Puerto Rico.
Puerto Rico, okay.
Every Monday they have Lunes de Plena, in which they just play plena. And even though they have it throughout the whole year, trying to beat that stereotype of plena is just Christmas music, like, the Christmas ones are really fun. And it's like everybody, and I think it's mainly because like everybody's happy in Christmas, and everybody's looking forward to seeing their families and eating good food and all of that. So that's something that I will be doing when I go to Puerto Rico, and just listening to these. Like, my dad is a percussionist, like self-taught percussionist, and we know like all the cuts, like all the little things that you wouldn't notice in this. So I think that's something that I really lock in, like, with my dad, and we're really close, and listening to these albums. I think that's something I look forward to. I think it's different to listen to them by yourself in the diaspora, but then when you go to like a mall and then you listen to this, it's like, I'm finally home. Like, you're at the gas station and you're playing this. It's just like, I feel like hugged.
Yeah. So what might your research look like going forward with this? It's a really cool concept.
Yeah, I think like I'm working on trying to make my research more accessible and reach a wider audience. So
Christmas will do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
you want to say wide audience?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So I think, like, for example, I was doing research on the first instance, like this album, and that's where I found out where a lot of these songs are based on música jíbara, and that's people don't know that. So like I did like a short 1-minute video talking about like, here's the things that you don't know about this.
Okay.
About this album. So I think even though I do want to write, and I think it's important to in the academic world to have resources where you have that written down, it's very important. But I feel like it's also important to expand to the oral traditions that people are having. And I think also that would give me feedback, like maybe someone sees my content and goes like, oh, I learned it this way, or I heard this other thing. I see a lot of people in Puerto Rico who do like things with language, for example, and their social media becomes like a way to learn different traditions or different experiences that people have. So I hope that my research with Christmas music in PR like takes that route where I'm able to learn through that and teach through like a more accessible and maybe even funner than just sitting down and reading a journal article about like Christmas music.
Plus it'd probably be like some like white guy from 50 years ago.
Yeah, that's
his understanding of Christmas music during his like week visit there, right?
Yeah, that's another thing. Like a lot of the like foundations of music in Puerto Rico, Christmas music or any other music, is based on either like people from like the US or Europe that went there for a little time and studied it, or like people, like privileged people in Puerto Rico who didn't really grow up with those traditions and then write about it. So I think there's a lot of work that needs to be done talking to the people that grew up with it and play it in Mondays at El Boricua and make those connections there.
Yeah, it would be an awesome like sabbatical project just to go there middle of October and just spend the whole time just cruising around Puerto Rico.
Definitely.
Yeah, finding out about different Christmas things. Well, thank you so much for sitting down and talking about this. This has been wonderful. And Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad.
Yeah.